Carol Maltese was born in 1995. She was half Italian and half Dutch. From a young age, Carol showed strong determination. After her father, Fabio, moved to Holland, her mother, Zen, stayed in Italy to raise her daughter alone. It wasn't easy for Zen. She had to work long hours and often be away from home because of her job. Despite this, young Carol understood her mother's situation and did not hold a grudge. She knew her mother was working hard for her well-being. Carol grew up in a small provincial town called Sesta Calenda, Italy. Here, she studied dancing, horse riding, and developed a love for traveling. She spoke several languages, and books were her true passion. Carol was active and sociable, loved attention, and although she could be a bit boastful, she was also very sweet and cheerful. In 2015, Carol began studying at a technical university. During this time, she started a relationship and became pregnant by her boyfriend. She was only 20 years old and the pregnancy was unplanned. Despite this, Carol made the difficult decision to keep the baby, confident that she would not regret it. After giving birth to her son in 2016, Carol quickly realized that motherhood was far more challenging than she had imagined. Both Carol and her boyfriend were still trying to find their footing in life. However, they were determined to make things work, and they moved to the larger city of Verona to find better job opportunities. In Verona, Carol found work as a sales assistant in a shoe store. Life seemed to be getting better, and although the couple faced difficulties, they managed to get by. The turning point in Carol's life came in 2019 when she unexpectedly fell in love with another man. She began leading a double life, which lasted several months before her boyfriend found out. The confrontation led to their breakup, and Carol, who was already planning to leave him, decided to start fresh with her new lover. She moved in with him, leaving her son with his biological father. During this time, Carol's mother was also suffering from a neurodegenerative disease which deteriorated her health rapidly. Carol made sure to spend as much time with her mother as she could. In February 2020, the pandemic hit Europe, and like most Italians, Carol faced significant hardships. She could not leave home to work, and the lockdown made it difficult for her to carry out her usual activities. Finances became a problem, and Carol found herself unable to send money to support her son. This financial strain pushed her to explore new ways of making money. Carol started a YouTube channel to talk about the difficulties of living under lockdown restrictions. However, she quickly realized that creating content on YouTube was not a sustainable source of income. After some thought, she turned to the OnlyFans platform, believing it would be more profitable. Using the pseudonym Charlotte Angel, Carol began creating explicit photos and videos, and soon she was earning substantial money. She enjoyed this new direction, but it came with some downsides. Once her friends found out about her new career, many of them cut ties with her. Carol, however, viewed their reactions as unjust, calling it prejudice. She believed that her new career was a form of art and that Italy in particular was not progressive enough to accept this industry. Carol's popularity on OnlyFans grew quickly, and she was soon invited to participate in adult films. She took part in performances in public and even openly discussed her participation in interviews. Despite the taboo surrounding her new profession, Carol advocated for women to freely choose their line of work without judgment. She faced constant moral pressure from society, her family, and even her new boyfriend, who disapproved of her work. Eventually, they broke up, adding to the emotional turmoil in Carol's life. At the end of 2020, Carol moved to the province of Milan, a small town with just 15,000 residents. She briefly worked in a perfume store but soon returned to filming explicit content. During this time, she met a man named David Fontana, a 42-year-old banker. David was a well-known figure on social media, where he shared content related to cooking, high-tech gadgets, and photography. He was married, but, through the internet, found attractive women willing to participate in candid photo shoots. He met Carol in November 2020, and they began dating, despite David being married. He offered Carol money in exchange for sex, and she agreed. By March 2021, David had confessed to his wife about the affair and insisted on a divorce. The two moved in together, and their relationship deepened. David helped Carol with her explicit content, taking a portion of the earnings for his involvement. Carol became more famous in the adult industry, receiving offers for contracts from other countries. David, despite knowing the nature of Carol's work, did not seem bothered by it. However, he was jealous and became possessive of her. This led to tension between them. In late 2021, Carol reconnected with her ex-boyfriend, who suggested they get back together. David, fearing that Carol would leave him for the younger man, became furious and began threatening her ex. Despite Carol refusing to rekindle her past relationship, the situation escalated, and her ex filed a police report after his car tires were punctured, an act that was suspected to be done by David. However, there was no concrete evidence linking him to the crime. By early 2022, Carol's social media following had grown to over 30,000. She split her time between filming content in the Czech Republic and Holland and making custom videos for her fans. She also began dating a colleague from the adult film industry, a man named Salvatore Gal, whom she met on set. They quickly became close, and Salvatore proposed to Carol. Carol's feelings for Salvatore were real, and she agreed to marry him. But she needed to get rid of David, who was still part of her life. Despite her feelings for Salvatore, Carol continued to live with David, who still took a percentage of her earnings from her videos. Life was complicated for Carol, but she earned enough money to live comfortably. In 2022, Carol abruptly disappeared from all public platforms and social media. She stopped answering phone calls, and her friends became worried. She later claimed that she was busy with personal matters, such as finding housing in Verona and improving her relationship with her son. However, after 2 months of silence, things took a dark turn. On March 20, 2022, a local man was walking through a village in Borna, where he enjoyed spending time. From a ledge, he noticed suspicious black garbage bags that looked unusually heavy, as though filled with stones. Curious, he descended to investigate and unwrapped one of the bags, finding a human hand inside. The man immediately called the police. Upon arrival, the authorities discovered 4 packages, each containing dismembered parts of a body. The parts were so badly mutilated that it was impossible to immediately identify the victim. The killer had likely been a hunter or a butcher, as the dissection showed professional precision. The body parts were frozen before being discarded down the ledge, making it clear that the killer had taken great care to conceal the identity of the victim. This discovery led investigators to suspect they were dealing with a serial killer. The police released a public warning asking the local residents to report any sightings or knowledge of the missing woman. Forensic experts soon determined that the victim was a young woman, around 155 centimeters tall, with dark hair and multiple tattoos. However, many of the tattoos had been deliberately damaged by the killer in an attempt to prevent identification. Despite the police releasing descriptions of the tattoos, no one came forward to identify the woman. As forensic analysis continued, it became evident that the woman was Carol Maltese. Her disappearance, coupled with the gruesome discovery of her remains, left everyone in shock. The investigation was just beginning, but the evidence pointed to a horrifying conclusion. Carol had become the victim of someone she trusted. Examinations showed that the victim had died more than a month ago and was kept in a freezer for a long period before being thrown from the cliff. This information caught the attention of journalist Andrei Torelli, who was also the editor of a magazine. He became interested in the mysterious murder and began analyzing all the available details. Based on the information, the journalist made a logical assumption. First, the criminal likely didn't want to transport the remains to such a remote area. He probably lived relatively close to the place where the body was found. Second, Torelli was convinced that the killer knew his victim, meaning she must have lived nearby as well. Of course, this was a big assumption, but it was where he started. Then, Andrei Torelli asked a logical question. Why had there been no report about the disappearance of a person matching the description of the girl found? After all, the victim had been dead for over a month. Why hadn't her relatives noticed her absence and reported it? A week after the discovery of the body, on March 26, 2022, a breakthrough in the case came. A random witness came forward and claimed to know the girl who had been found in Borno. He identified her by the tattoos he had previously seen, specifically when she gave an interview under the pseudonym Charlotte. It was possible she had been an adult film actress who actively developed her social media presence. After looking at photographs of Charlotte's tattoos, the Carabinieri were convinced that she was the victim. The police then released her pseudonym to the public in an effort to gather useful tips. Torelli continued his investigation into the murdered woman's life. He discovered that the girl worked with 2 agencies. The first film studio told him that she hadn't worked with them for some time and hadn't responded to their calls, leading them to believe she had retired from the industry. They had no further useful information. At the second studio, an adult film actress who claimed to be a friend of the deceased gave Torelli Charlotte's phone number. This led them to identify the victim's real name, Carol Malta. Andrei tried calling Carol's number several times but received no response. Later, he contacted her via a messaging app. To his surprise, Carol responded to the message. The journalist tried to arrange an interview with her under the pretense of discussing her career in adult films, but she rudely refused. It became clear to Torelli that he wasn't communicating with Carol, but with the likely killer. Undeterred, the journalist persisted and tried to keep the conversation going, even attempting to convince the person claiming to be Carol to record a voice message or talk on the phone. When this failed, Andrei changed tactics. He told the person that the body of a girl with identical tattoos had recently been found, and he wanted to verify that Carol was alive. The person, clearly unaware that Carol's body had already been discovered, seemed shocked. Torelli believed that the killer, expecting the body to remain undiscovered for much longer, was panicking. Realizing this, the journalist continued the conversation, pressing for information. He was certain that he had just spoken to Carol's killer. Torelli now had 2 options. First, he could publish the information in his magazine, which would create a media sensation and elevate his own career. Second, he could contact the police to pass on the information, which would allow detectives to follow up, but also risk the information being leaked to the press. Despite the risks, Torelli knew his intervention could help catch the killer, so he decided to contact the police first. On April 2nd, he went to the police station and shared the information with the Carabinieri. Only after this did he write an article in his magazine, but he withheld some crucial details, including the victim's real name and his communication with the killer. Nevertheless, the article caused a sensation. After interacting with Torelli, the killer became more cautious, monitoring the news closely. He quickly realized the investigation was closing in on him and fell into a panic. On the day the article was published, David Fontana, the fiancé of Carol Maltese, and his partner Salvatore, went to the police station to report her disappearance. They were immediately questioned, and the interrogation lasted until 4 p.m. On March 28, 2022, public reports confirmed through DNA testing that the deceased woman was indeed Carol Malta. The next day, on March 29th at 7:15 a.m., the Carabinieri addressed the public and announced the arrest of a suspect, David Fontana, who was detained on suspicion of premeditated murder with aggravating circumstances. Fontana had been nervous and inconsistent in his testimony during the interrogation. Initially, he claimed to have not seen Carol in 2 years, which turned out to be false. He was quickly identified as the main suspect. And under pressure, David Fontana finally confessed. He admitted that on January 11, 2022, he and Carol filmed an explicit video at the request of one of her fans. The video was more extreme than previous ones, with the customer asking to cover Carol's head with a bag, bind her, seal her mouth with duct tape, and then hit her repeatedly with a hammer. David's instructions were to torture the actress, which she agreed to voluntarily. However, David took it too far and struck Carol several times with the hammer. Afterward, when he removed the bag, he realized she was dying. To prevent her from suffering further, David killed her by slashing her throat with a kitchen knife. Instead of contacting the authorities, David kept the body and began planning how to dispose of it. Over the next 3 months, he kept Carol's body in a freezer. During this time, he used her phone to continue communicating with her family and friends, creating the illusion that Carol was still alive. He also used her social media accounts to post photos and make updates, and even made purchases using her bank card. David went as far as writing a false disappearance report and even attempted to stage an attempted suicide, though no one believed his claims. He lived for months without suspicion, continuing to cover up his crime. The trial for Carol's murder began on November 24, 2022. David's defense argued that her death was an accident, claiming that he had gotten carried away during the filming. However, the prosecution presented compelling evidence that the crime was premeditated, pointing to the brutal nature of the video shoot, as well as David's actions afterward, to conceal the crime. The prosecutor suggested that David's motive was either jealousy or financial gain, as Carol had planned to leave the adult film industry and start a new life with her fiancé, Salvatore. A psychiatric examination concluded that David was fully aware of his actions. The court found him guilty of murder and sentenced him to 30 years in prison, though the prosecutor had originally requested life imprisonment. He was also ordered to pay compensation to Carol's son, parents, and other relatives. This verdict shocked the Maltese family, who felt that the sentence was far too lenient, especially considering the brutality of the crime. Andrei Torelli, the journalist who had played a crucial role in solving the case, later published a book detailing the investigation. He outlined how his persistence had helped bring one of the most brutal killers in history to justice. Thank you for watching.